All right, ladies and gentlemen, we would like to welcome to the show a very special guest. He's the director of the new Netflix documentary docu-series. I don't know what we call these things these days, but it's called Court of Gold. And our guest today is Jake Rogal. Welcome to the show, brother.
Thanks for having me, man. Again, huge fan, and I appreciate the time.
Appreciate that, man. Means a lot, honestly. I was able to dive into one episode. Didn't want to do too much watching, honestly. I want to spread these things out because following Team USA's journey this summer, when I tell you an emotional roller coaster, um, you just wouldn't believe it. So, just like, how did you get involved with this in the first place? Because this, for me, as a basketball fanatic, which I'm sure you are as well, seems like the opportunity of a lifetime. How does this even come about?
Yeah, it's a good question. I worked on The Last Dance a couple
Mm.
years ago, so I got to know Connor Shell
Couple
really well.
people might have seen the seen that movie.
I got to know Connor Shell really well, and Connor Shell was at ESPN at the time, and we became friends. And he started a company called Words and Pictures that I joined. And when I joined, this project was already in development. So he had
Mm.
already worked out with USAB. He was in the middle of negotiations there. He was talking to the IOC. So the project was already being talked about inside the company. And he told me one day, "Hey, we have this project I think could be really big, and I think you would love it." And as soon as he told me what it was, I was in. I knew immediately how special it could be, because the access in the Olympics is really unprecedented. And
Mm.
also, you have the superstars that you do in these
Oh
Olympics that
God.
had already said they were playing. So it was a no brainer, done deal. But the project had already been kind of going once I joined in.
So, I did a little bit of reading about how this whole thing kind of came together, and you guys had to make a choice as to who you would whittle down the teams to in terms of who you'd be following around. And obviously, Team USA and France were no brainers. France is hosting the Olympics. Team USA is what Olympic basketball is essentially all about. So that's no brainers for us. But the other two teams, you had to consider other outfits outside of Serbia as well as Team Canada. And who else did you guys consider, and how did you ultimately decide like these are the other two guys we're gonna follow around to make sure this thing is special?
Yeah. So we talked about potentially Germany because they had won the World Cup
Mhm.
and they were a really good team heading in. We talked about Greece because Giannis
Of
and
course.
Greece had a really good team. We talked about South Sudan because they had such an amazing
Wow,
story.
such a great
Um,
story. Yeah.
so it was really hard to pick, and ultimately we decided on Canada and Serbia. Canada because a lot of people in the basketball world felt that they were a dark horse to win the entire thing. They
Hmm.
had, I think, the second most NBA players to the United States. They have Shea, and anytime you have Shea, he can single handedly win a game.
Yep.
So we wanted our teams to go far. So Canada made a lot of sense. So that left one team. And Serbia ultimately stood out because their country's backstory is so amazing. And we wanted to tell the history of that country's basketball backstory. And then they also finished second at the World Cup, the FIBA World Cup. So they got silver. And then you add Jokic. So they had a potential to really go far. So we thought, okay, not only are they compelling stories, but these teams really have a chance to make noise. And then you just, you hope that your teams go far. The other thing is we always knew we could pivot. So we thought, like, okay, as teams start to do well, maybe we start to try to make some inroads there. So at one
Mm.
point, France was really struggling. Serbia was playing well, but they had already lost the United States. So we started talking to Germany a little bit. Went to a
Mm.
practice, interviewed the coach because they were amazing. They were killing everybody.
Yeah.
And then pretty soon after we were talking to them, they lost to France and got knocked out. So we had the idea that we could potentially pivot, but our four teams, we were pretty excited about them, the opportunity to be with them.
Yeah, I want to stick on Serbia a little bit because they are even more so than the rest of the European clubs who, you guys tell the story that Europe catches basketball fever because of the 92 Olympics in Barcelona and these rock star NBA players showing up and just spreading love and admiration for the game throughout the continent. But I would say Serbia is even more connected to it because, they're former members of the USSR. And, the old Yugoslavia teams also used to kick the butts of our college kids. And that went into the calculation. That lineage of being part of that basketball tradition went into the calculation of even making a dream team happen in the first place.
No doubt. Serbia's story is a little different. I mean, different in many ways, but from the dream team aspect, it is different because they already had a really rich basketball history. So they didn't need the dream team to tell them basketball was amazing. What
Mhm.
Serbia represents is that basketball is so much more than a sport. And so when Serbia, I mean, former Yugoslavia was going through what they were going through, basketball could have gone away because there was a lot more important things to focus on. However, basketball was a light when they needed it. And it was
Mm.
in a time when they really needed it. So basketball to them was this sort of beacon, and it helped them get through a lot of hard times. So they are proof positive that sports mean more than just the sport itself. And so their story is unique to the point where we try to separate it from the other backstories. The other backstories do have some dream team elements there. Serbia's is told a bit later, and part of the calculation in that was separating it because it is a different backstory than the other three.
Man, another thing I thought you guys did a wonderful job of drawing out for the audience is the sort of different stages of the careers of many of these stars. Like, and again, the star wattage and accomplishments is on another, it's unprecedented, it's on another level in terms of this tournament. Somebody even says, like, this is probably the greatest assemblage of talent in the history of Olympic basketball. And I would actually agree in terms of from Team USA and dispersed around all the other teams in the tournament. But like, what is it like for you guys to be around a Victor Wembanyama at this stage? You know, he's in the freaking zygote stage, basically, embryonic stage of his basketball journey, man. What's it like to be around that kid specifically and around all the excitement for Team France?
Yeah, that's a great question. Being around someone like Victor is you feel starstruck still, even if you're trying to be professional. It's amazing when you see someone great doing great things, about to do historic things. You feel very grateful to be around somebody like that because there's an aura about these guys that is palpable. When Victor walks into a room, not because of his size is one thing, but because of a presence that he has, it's kind of indescribable. He has that thing, and people always
Mm,
describe it as like that guy has it. Victor has it, whatever that is. It's like you feel it when he comes in a room, and so I think a lot of it is just trying to take it in. This job, you get to meet a lot of cool people. Sometimes you want to just step back and be like, regardless of the job, I'm grateful to be in this moment right now, seeing this guy because he's about to do huge things. He's already doing huge things. And so I think it was just being around him was amazing. Also, at his age, to act like he does, he's cerebral, he's thoughtful, he's smart, he pauses before he speaks, which is rare nowadays.
mm.
He's just he is so smart and he's so young, and so I mean the sky is the limit for him. As cliche as that sounds, and seeing him at this phase is just you're lucky, and it's exciting to be able to show people that too. In 15 years, when you look back on this doc and you
Oh
see
my
Victor
God.
Wembanyama
Yeah.
when he's in his early 20s, it's going to be fun to watch because you'll be like, oh my god, at this time we didn't know he was about to do all these things we know he did. So
Yeah, it's incredible how the league works that way because so many of these players have podcasts and all of that. They're media entities in their own right, and I think about like somebody like Kevin Garnett, who literally I've been watching him since he was a teenager, and to see him
mhm.
now is like he's just like a grown middle-aged man. It's just a freaky sort of experience, right? And so, like you're right, like that's cool to have that time capsule with Wemby, where like, yeah, he's just a kid right now, and we know and hope that so many incredible things are going to be happening to and for him in the
Yeah.
future. So that's dope. And I do want to ask you because like oftentimes, like you go into something not expecting to come out of it with what you did. Like I remember I had like a job, like this quick job with Spotify, and we would talk to like a bunch of players and all of that. I remember meeting De'Aaron Fox and being blown away by how like smart he was and just like how self-aware and thoughtful and just like he just felt like somebody who was out of his time in terms of his age and like you're a child, like you're basically a child star. Like I just remember being blown away by De'Aaron Fox. It just felt
Yeah.
random because I didn't think that that was going to happen. Do you remember any of your experiences throughout last year's Olympics where you just had an experience with some of these guys that just, kind of took you by surprise?
Yeah, and I think Nicholas Batum, Nico,
Mm,
that's what everyone calls him. He was somebody who was, of course, on my radar. He's an amazing player, but when you're thinking about the stars, you're thinking about like Wemby and Shea and all these guys. And the minute Batum walked in and started talking to us, you could tell he was cool right away. He was really really reflective, And he just brought it every time we talked to him. Every time he spoke to us, he talked about his father and his father passing and what basketball meant to him because of that relationship. And he had his kid at the Olympics and trying to have his kid experience this before he retires from Olympic play. And it just like the feeling that sports are more than sports permeated throughout all of these shoots. And I think on the Olympic stage, these athletes feel that because they're playing for country and they're playing for family. And so like when you're around dudes like Nico Batum, you feel that. You feel how much it means to them. So like he was amazing. Bogdan Bogdanovic was incredible.
Mm.
He's an awesome dude. He's really funny. He's amazing on the Olympic stage. I mean, he's obviously a phenomenal basketball
Oh
player,
yeah.
but he takes it to another level competitively.
Big cojones. As
Yeah,
my
man.
man Bam McMahon says, the cojones factor with him is very high.
Yeah, totally. I mean, he was back and forth with Melo. That whole thing
Oh,
was cool.
excellent.
So yeah, there were guys who, you have expectations, but they stick with you when they leave the room. And I'd say those two guys really, really stuck with me.
Man, I gotta get to these games because I gotta tell you, bro. I was literally sitting in this very apartment for the semifinal game against Serbia,
Yep.
having a meltdown. Literally texting people. I'm on live text with people like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. I can't believe this is how KD and LeBron and Steph's last Olympics is gonna go. Like Jokic is like, bro, he was floating. It like the way this guy was playing, he had absolute command and control of the game. I was miserable. Okay. And, and so, a Devin Booker three here, a KD mid range there, a LeBron play here, Embiid finally having a moment in the tournament. Dude, like, what goes through your mind and the story you're trying to tell when Team USA is about to freaking lose to the Serbs? Like, what
Yeah.
is that? Because as
So,
just a fan, I'm not making a movie. I'm apoplectic, Jake. Like, you don't understand
yeah.
how upset I was.
Well, I'm a fan. Like, I have to do it my job, but I'm a fan, dude. Like, my heart is the heart of a fan. So I watch these things with work in mind, but there's a fan part in mind too that fight each other throughout the entire process. So, like, I was in that moment, I didn't know what to do. My insides were being ripped because I was like, this is good for the show, but there's drama and I want the US to win. And so, like, you go through all the feelings you had. I had the same thing. We debated what would be best for the show. Do you want to show the global parity by having the US lose? Would it be better if they just won because you have the star power? There are so many scenarios going through my head in that moment. And then watching them pull it out the way they did, I knew that was good for the
It's a
show. I knew
Disney
that was
movie.
heart. Everything was satisfied. But what was cool is after that game, we went to the hotel with Team USA. And the relief and vibe and happiness in that room was unbelievable. These guys were so happy, dude, and relieved. They were taking huge, deep breaths. Like you could tell the relief that was in that room. And so, yeah, man, it was intense. Just like you felt, I felt all those emotions, and I also had the show, so it was like I kind of get sick when I think about that moment because I was so nervous. It was crazy.
Yeah, like literally, I'm texting one of my close friends, my boy Jay, and he's like, bro, there's still time. Stop panicking. It's gonna be okay. Blah, 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 blah. And I'm just like, oh my God, this is horrible. Oh my, like every play, I'm thinking, this is it. It's over. They just made another shot. It was ridiculous. So what I decided for the gold medal game, I was like, I can't do this by myself again. I have to be with friends. And so
Yeah,
a group of friends we made plans to make sure we watched the game together. And for
yeah,
me, it just felt like moral support because that was just too much. And, I just remember seeing these guys and everybody had watched it individually. Cause I guess I hadn't talked to anybody like, yo, are you going to be watching this game for the semifinals? But like everybody was locked in on
yeah,
their own accord. And they were like, dude, everything that happened to you happened to us the
yeah.
exact same way. And the feeling of euphoria of these guys actually coming through and delivering was just amazing. And so,
Well,
that
the other
sets the
thing,
stage
dude,
for
is
the
like
gold medal game.
I had people texting me being like, "What's going on?" And I'm like, "You're watching. I don't know. I'm watching what you're watching. Like, just because I'm there doesn't mean I have any. Like, I'm not playing. I have no clue. So,
Like, what the fuck? Explain
like,
this to
what's
me.
up?
I need answers.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know, man. Like, Serbia's shooting the shit out of the ball. Like, I don't know.
It's so amazing. Yeah, they just couldn't miss, and Jokic seemed to make every right decision,
Yeah.
every play. When he had to score, he scored. He made it was just it really was truly insane, and that's, that kind of sets the stage for the gold medal game against France on the road. Just a couple of tidbits before we get into it. A close buddy of mine happened to be in Paris during the games,
Mhm.
and he was actually at the Soho House in Paris watching the semifinals game, and he was like, "Waz, they were all rooting against us." The entire freaking and I guess he was surprised how locked in the city was for the basketball portion of the Olympics. Like everybody knows, like France, Europe, it's a big soccer place.
Yeah.
Everything else is like second billing by a mile to soccer. But that let me know that like the entire city and by extension the country was actually locked into what France basketball team was doing. And so USA's on the road against the hosting team with all these NBA guys, plus the guy who everybody has identified as the next great, truly ascendant NBA player. That's
Yep.
got to be really exciting for you guys as filmmakers.
It was amazing, man. The vibe over there and the basketball culture that's developed in France is
Wow.
unreal. And like you hear basketball is a global game, you felt it there and you really saw like basketball is global, the capital G. Like this sport is now hitting every country and people deeply care. And while yes, I agree people were rooting against the United States, people still wanted to see greatness. So when
Mm.
LeBron would dunk or KD would go off and score,
Yeah.
go 10 for 10 against Serbia, people were on their feet clapping. So yes, they ultimately maybe wanted their country to win. They still wanted to see these guys ball out and they did. And so I think they got a good show. And like I didn't feel any hatred or like any it was intense, but it was like all in good spirit for the sport. I had never felt a global community come together for a sport like I did at the Olympics.
So the game, man, I'm watching it, and the whole time I'm like, we have a better team than these guys. But then Yabu Sele keeps making impossible shots, thereby guaranteeing his next NBA contract, which is
Yeah.
crazy, as an outcome from this Olympics. Like he's having a nice season too, by the way. Like he's
Yeah.
clearly an NBA player, and he would not have been without this breakout against Team USA and just broadly in the Olympics. Wemby is making all of these deep threes and all of this, and then they just keep fighting and fighting and inching and inching. And then of course, Chef Curry, just a movie, picture perfect ending to tie
Yeah.
a bow on your movie, man. That's gotta be just like goosebumps inducing shit.
It was amazing, dude. It was like you couldn't have asked for a better stage and a better moment. The thing is like France was legitimately in that game
The whole
because
game.
it is crazy when you look at the rosters and stuff. Emotion and confidence go a long way when you're at an elite level. And these guys had the country behind them, all the emotion, and they were confident. They had just beat Canada and they beat
Mhm,
Germany. And like, so these dudes
mhm.
mentally were like, we're on the stage, we belong here. So, like, that can go a long way. And it did, it kept them in the game. But ultimately, Steph is just, he's inevitable. And in those moments, he starts hitting those, and you're like, okay, how many is he going to make? Not like, is he going to make the next one? It's like, how many more can Steph make in this moment? So, honestly, like there was so much going on in the arena that I didn't really absorb it in the moment. It
Of
was more one of
course.
those things after, and I went on Twitter, and
In
everyone was
post.
tweeting about Steph, whether they were
Oh my
basketball
God.
fans or not, and you were like, all right, I get what the significance of this now was. Yeah, it was amazing, man. One of the best moments in the history of basketball. No hyperbole.
That, like, I know if you follow the NBA, you're familiar with the sort of the narrative around the NBA and basketball and the ratings are down and blah blah blah. And like coming out of that game, I was just like, guys, like if there are stakes and you can explain to people the story of why a given game matters, people will want to freaking tune in.
Yep.
And this USA France game is just a perfect example of that. People understand the characters, people understand the story, they understand the stakes,
Yeah.
and everybody was just transfixed by it. And yeah, I just can't even imagine being in that arena when
Yeah.
Steph fires that last three and everybody's like, oh, oh.
And that's what I mean by the French fans cheering it on. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, they want their team to win, but when you see greatness like that, you can't do anything. But if you love the sport, it amazes you. It puts you on your feet. It makes you clap for the person. It's a respect of the sport moment. And I think you all saw that in the crowd. People were going nuts.
So the story of the Olympics is awesome. I think another thing you guys did a good job of sprinkling different characters to talk about and sort of contextualize 2024 games. You guys got some awesome gets that I don't want to spoil. You guys even got a president involved. I'll let the audience guess which one. You never know. You got to tune into the doc to see which one. Who was like your most surprising get, man, that you guys were like, holy smokes, we're getting this person involved?
Um, I think Tony Parker was a big one for us.
Mm,
He's he uh he's not hard to get, but he's like someone he doesn't do like you don't see
he
him in a
doesn't
lot of
talk.
stuff these days. Yeah, and like you don't know how he's gonna be in an interview because he's pretty composed. And then once he brought in, he had passion for his country. That was cool. Steve Nash, Dirk, all those guys were
Mm.
super cool. And you don't know if you're gonna get them. They're in their lives. They're kind of beyond basketball now. They're doing their thing. So like you don't know who you're gonna get. So some of those guys were amazing. But like you said, I mean, getting President Obama, which I don't think is a secret at this point,
Yeah.
that's like a life moment. That's one of those moments where you're trying to just take it in. So yeah, and also
And by the way, in the ways that you guys shot him, like this, like again, I don't want to give too much away, but like
right,
there's like a conversation that him and Anthony Edwards are having
yeah,
that my brain is just like it's trying to my brain can't put it together. Like just shooting the shit is it's the kind of thing that like if you wrote it down, it's like, oh, whatever. But like to see it, it's I don't know. There's something about seeing those two
yeah.
interact in the way that they do that was just so endearing and amazing.
Yeah, well, like the raw, that's like what I hope people take. One of the things I hope people take away from this is like this was authentic and this was raw.
Yes.
You saw people
Yes.
being themselves, even though we were
Yes.
there. So like Anthony Edwards and President Barack Obama interacting in a moment, that was how they would have interacted whether we were there or not.
Yeah.
And we just you just let it happen. So I hope the authenticity comes out because this is really an authentic doc. We didn't make them do anything. We shot what they were doing. There's a big difference in those two. A lot of docs these days, you ask people to do certain
Don't
things.
even get
This
me
one was like
started.
shoot it, and show people what it is. And so I think the rawness and the authenticity is something we really harped on. And so what you're seeing is how it unfolded. It was not us making something that doesn't actually happen, you know?
Jake, I gotta say, man, a lot of people, especially in my world, are like, "Oh, have we reached the saturation point of sports documentaries?" And I understand the sentiment, especially with like a lot of this, quite frankly, athlete-driven stuff where these
Yep.
guys just want to do hagiography of themselves and nothing else, and never be interesting in public. I have to say, your doc is not like that.
Thank you, man.
And I just wanted to pay you the ultimate compliment for that
I
because
appreciate that.
anybody,
I feel that.
even if you have a passing like interest in this stuff, you will be compelled by what is on your screen. And
Thank
I absolutely loved it. Thank you for putting this together in the way and the manner that you did, man. You killed it. And if there's
appreciate that.
anything else you would like for people to know about your doc, man, please share it with our viewers.
I appreciate that, man. It means a lot to me. And I think the biggest takeaway is how global this thing is, how many
Mm,
countries it touches, how many people can relate to what we're trying
care.
to put on the screen. It's bigger than basketball, and that sport has the ability to really connect with people globally more than any other sport that I've seen in America. Baseball is the only thing that even comes remotely close. So I
Mm.
think the biggest takeaway from this thing is that basketball is global. It is a sport that touches every part of the world, not just the country, and people will see that in this doc, hopefully.
Jake, man, thank you so much for coming on. The name of the doc is Court of Gold. It's going to be on Netflix February 18th. I'm blessed enough to have them screening, so I'm I'm gonna be
Yeah,
tuning in every
I
couple
appreciate
of
it.
days. So I don't want to binge this. I really do want to savor it. But
Thank
yeah,
you.
thank you again for coming on, brother.
Dude, I really appreciate it. And again, big fan. So keep doing your thing. I'll be listening.
Fan of yours as well, man.
Thank you, man.
Make sure you hit that notification bell so that you are alerted every time we drop a brand new In My Feelings. And make sure you hit the like button. We will see you guys next week. Peace out, y'all.